Hi, my name is Kaylee Meehan, and the project that I'm presenting today is affordable childcare for single parents. So, I identified a need in my community for affordable childcare specifically for single parents, which will allow them to join the workforce or further their careers or further their education. Families also often struggle with providing for their family and still finding a balance for life and their kids. Oftentimes, they find themselves in a situation where they have to work to provide for their kids and they miss out on milestones and events. And I think it's an important thing to address in our community specifically. The sacrifices that single parents make create a never ending cycle where a parent is providing for their children, but they're not actively seeking out their own goals and aspirations. And it creates a never ending cycle of having to work really, really hard to provide for their families when affordable childcare would allow for them to go to work without worry of their children and present that as an opportunity for them to further their own growth in the long run. That makes it easier on them because their salaries will go up and their morale will go up as well without having to worry about where their children are during the day. So the project that I designed to address this problem is volunteer-based childcare that is sanctioned through the school corporation. Locally, that would be Vigo County School Corporation. And I plan to implement it for birth through elementary age. Those seem to be the ages where the need is more dire. Kids are sometimes more expensive when they're babies, and oftentimes daycares and preschools for birth through elementary age kids are really unaffordable because they pay their employees well. So the Envision project is for low-income single-parent households to receive free childcare through the school system that acts sort of as a daycare, but without the educational value, without the educational parts being the focus. The focus is on providing for the parents and giving them the resources that they need to further their education or their careers while still giving the kiddos involved a day full of enrichment and educational pieces for them to yeah. So I have two main objectives for my project. The first is to allow single parents to further their career or education without worry of affording childcare or finding someone to watch their kids while they're at work. And then the second goal is enrichment for the kids involved, because oftentimes it's a moral dilemma with kids with single parents. You see a lot of loneliness and because parents are working really, really hard for their kids, and kids who aren't old enough don't necessarily understand that when mom or dad misses out on things because they have to work to put food on the table for them. So enrichment for the kids is our secondary objective, just to create a positive environment for them and a safe place for them to be. So the stakeholders in this project, first and foremost, is interest from the qualified families. So if we don't have any interest from the families that would benefit from this program, we don't have a program at all. Secondly, would be support from the school corporation officials, because it's tough getting that sometimes, especially with the ongoing pandemic. It's hard to weasel your way in with a new project, but the goal is to gain full support from the school corp officials. And then finally, our volunteers are the third stakeholder. They will be the piece of this project that holds the entire thing together. So the plan, the first step in doing this and making this a reality is getting school board approval, which is a little bit of a gray area right now with all of the things going on with the pandemic, but I'm confident that we can make that happen. The second piece is, after we receive approval, is gathering volunteers and securing funding. Those two pieces kind of go hand in hand because you're outreaching into the community to find volunteers, and at the same time, you can also outreach for funding and donations and such. And then next part of the plan would be communication with the parents, which I plan it as just an outreach to all Vigo County parents, just putting it out there and seeing if there's interest in it. And then the final piece is to just dive in. Once we have all of the pieces together, it should fall into place pretty easily. The resources needed are a little different than they would be in any other project because I envision this being completely volunteer-based. So my main resource would be volunteers. They will be the pieces or the gears that hold the machine together. The second part of the resources that I anticipate is educational material. That would be both resources for the kids and resources for the parents. So if the parents come and they need resources for how to further their education or how to get scholarships or whatever that might be, educational material like that might come at a lower cost. It might be free to help them find those. But for the kids, educational materials like enrichment things like toys or games or subscriptions to whatever it might be would be another resource that we would like to include. And then the final piece of that is that in the future we would hope to maybe gain support from local grant committees and potentially get government funding. But in order for that to happen, the first piece of that is establishing a program and proving that it works, and then we can ask the big guns for money. But initially it would be based on donations and volunteering of time. So the challenges, first and foremost, like I talked about earlier, school board approval is probably the biggest bump to get over right now. In Vigo County, the way they run it is, I think, monthly meetings on the school board, and they address all of the problems that the public wants to address and move through it that way. And right now, there's a lot going on with school closures and COVID and the pandemic things. So it's kind of hard to weasel your way into that. I've found because I've sat into a couple of meetings, but I'm confident that with a little bit of hard-headedness and the passion that we can get through. And then the next piece of that is funding. So I have a history with collecting donations, and I feel confident that that is a thing that I can still do for a program like this. But it also comes with its own problems because you never know where the unexpected costs are going to pop up. So that's another challenge. A third challenge is technology because it's not always on our side. And even though we may send out communications, and some parents that may need the resources may not be connected through the internet or that way. So there will be challenges to technology that I think we can hurdle with alternatives such as paper communications and things like that instead of just sending out emails. And then the fourth challenge that I'm not super familiar with, but I know that we'll run into it, is childcare laws. I know that there's a lot of things that go into creating a legal, safe childcare system, and I'm confident that through doing it through the school corporation will help us with that. But I know that we'll run into that challenge. The timeline is no rush. I feel that a thing like this is important to take your time and really think about all of the steps that it takes. In the first year, my thoughts are approval and planning are the things, and the second year, funding and implementation will be the thing. The budget is super simple because they're volunteer based. There won't be budgets for salary. We would budget in things for thank you gifts and things like that, but as of right now, there's no salary budget. So I'm saying $200 a week will be the budget for miscellaneous things like basic childcare items, toys, snacks, things like that. And then, so to tell whether or not the project has worked, my thought is that we can interact with the kids to get their opinions if they're old enough, and then survey the parents twice a year just to see where they stand, see how the program is helping them, how it's impacting them, and what changes they think we should make, and make those changes based on their feedback. So, in conclusion, the success of this project relies solely on the community and its support with the donations and the volunteering. But I'm confident that this community will step up into that space. And then I believe that from this project, an entire generation's future could be changed for the better. And honestly, the generation of the parents as well. I mean, coming from that situation, it's tough to get out of that cycle. So being able to further your education and your career without sacrificing your kids' well-being is also going to change their lives for the better. Thank you.